Now we're going to continue on with the lesson, and we're going to complete some of these spaces. We're going to be talking about how we can calculate midpoints by using a midpoint formula. So let's take a look at this. There's a slightly different formula for a midpoint on a number line than there is for a midpoint in a coordinate xy plane. Let's talk first about the midpoint formula on a number line. So if if we have a line segment AB and we're on a number line, let's draw the number line underneath this. Okay, point A and B. And if point A has a value of x1, x sub 1, and B has a value of x sub 2. Let me show you specifically what we're doing here is we're using subscripts, which is sometimes done. Rather than calling this x and another value like y or z, we're creating two different variables, but we're using the same letter x, and we're just using a subscript, which is a number that is slightly below the variable, to represent that they're different variables. Okay, the calculation would be the value of the midpoint would be x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2, or just the average of the two values. Okay, we're going to use this in a moment. Let's take a look at our second midpoint formula in a coordinate plane. Okay, coordinate plane is a little bit of a different formula. Let's make a little coordinate plane over here. And let's say we have a point over here which is x. Well, let me say we're talking about AB. Let's call this A, and let's say that the coordinates of A are x1, y1. Okay, like they're given over here, x1, y1, x sub 1, y sub 1, and the coordinates here, let's say this is B, are x sub 2, y sub 2. Okay, so these are four different variables. Then the formula for the midpoint is going to be x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2, comma, y sub 1 plus y sub 2 divided by 2. Okay, so we're starting with these two coordinates, and our midpoint, which is going to be M, which is going to be somewhere in the middle of here, is going to equal that. X sub 1 plus x sub 2 over 2, and comma, that's the x coordinate of the midpoint, and y sub 1 plus y sub 2 over 2 is the y coordinate of the midpoint. Don't let the sub 1, sub 2, the subscript notation confuse you. It's not a big deal. So let us go ahead and use these formulas in a couple of problems. So, for example, let's look at problem number 10. And we're being told that W, R, and S are points on a number line, so let's draw a diagram of that. Okay, so we have a number line here. W is the midpoint, so we have R, W, and S. Okay. R equals 8. Okay, so we're told that R equals 8 and S equals 2. Okay, so we just kind of drew it offhand, and we're noticing that we got the larger number on the left and the smaller number on the right, right? Well, that's not supposed to be. So we're going to have to redraw this. Okay, so you're going to have to kind of recognize if it's not drawn right the first time, not a big deal. Go ahead and redraw it again. So let me redraw the correct number line. We still have W being the midpoint, but we know that R is greater than S, so R has to be on the right. And I should have seen that when I first drew it, but I didn't, and maybe sometimes you won't either. Okay, so if you kind of draw it the wrong way first time, don't worry about it. Let's draw it the right way. So S is equal to 2, R is equal to 8, and we have to figure out what is W. What is the coordinate of W? Well, we know our midpoint formula on a number line. So let's do our midpoint formula on a number line. Midpoint formula for the number line is x1, x sub 1 plus x sub 2 over 2. Well, what is x sub 1 and what is x sub 2? Well, it's very easy. X sub 1 is 2 and x sub 2 is 8. Okay, that's it. Despite the fancy subscript notation, it's just you're finding the average of 2 and 8. So this is really the same thing as 2 plus 8 over 2, which is 10 over 2, okay, which is 5. So that is our answer. The coordinate of W is 5. So W is 5. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Despite the complicated looking formula, if you just have 3 points and one is in the middle, you're simply adding the 2 coordinates of the endpoints and then dividing by 2 to find the midpoint. Okay, so now let's do one problem using the midpoint formula for the coordinate plane. So let's take a look at problem number 12. We're being told that we have coordinates of A and B, and I'm just going to sketch out a little graph here. Let me zoom in on this a little bit more. I'm trying to kind of keep it in. I'll zoom in on it once we're done writing this up. So the coordinates of A and B are 5, 8, and 7, 12. So let's just approximate this. Let's say 5, 8 is there. This is A. And 7, 12 is going to be a little bit above this. Let's put it over there. 7, 12 is B. Okay, now let's zoom in on this. We have to figure out what are the coordinates of M. We've got the coordinates of A is 5, 8. The coordinates of B is 7, 12. Well, 5, 8 is really the same thing as x1, y1. Okay, and 7, 12 is really the same as x2, y2. So we're calling the x value always, we're labeling it with x, but point 1, which we're going to say is point A, that means for that first point, the x-coordinate is 5. But for the second point, or x sub 2, the x-coordinate is 7. Similarly, for A, it's the first point, let's say, where that's kind of arbitrary, but we're calling it the first point. The y value of the first point is 8. So that's why we're going to have y1 equal to 8. And for B, we've got the y value of B, which is the y value of the second point, is equal to y sub 2. So y sub 2 is 12. Let's go ahead and, maybe it makes it a little bit more straightforward, we can actually make a little table for ourselves here. x1 is equal to 5. Let's say y1 is equal to 8. x2 is equal to 7. And y2 is equal to 12. And so now let's just plug this in to our midpoint formula. Okay, so our midpoint formula for xy coordinates, midpoint formula for the xy plane is equal to x sub 1 plus x sub 2 over 2, comma, y sub 1 plus y sub 2 over 2. All we have to do now is plug in the values that we have from above, and we'll get our answer. So let's go ahead and plug that in. X sub 1 is 5, x sub 2 is 7, so it's 5 plus 7 over 2, comma, y sub 1 is 8, y sub 2 is 12 over 2, 8 plus 12 over 2 is the y-coordinate. This is equal to 5 plus 7 is 12 over 2, 8 plus 20 is 20 over 2, and we finally have, when we simplify this, we have 6. This is the same thing as 6 comma 10, and that is our coordinates of point M. Coordinates of point M equals 6 comma 10. And this is the entire process by which you do it. First identify what is x1, what is x2 according to the drawing, and then simply substitute it into the formula.